These are Laowa's new Nanomorph 1.5 times anamorphic zoom lenses. In this video, we're going to answer 3 questions. Are they any good? What do they like to use? And perhaps the most important question, are they for you? This footage is captured on a Kinefinity Marvo LF Mark II. As these lenses only cover Super 35, I'm using the Marvo LF in its Super 35 crop mode. I've shot a mixture of 3x2 and 4x5, utilizing the entire height of the Marvo's Super 35 mode. A lot of reviewers have been talking about the fact that these lenses feature pincushion distortion. Yes, pincushion distortion is present, but it's fairly subtle. When you consider the amount of barrel distortion present in lenses like Atlas's Mercury lenses or Blazar's Remus, the Nanomorph is not as extreme. By comparison, it's actually fairly flat. Staring at geometric patterns like brick walls is a torture test, so let me give you a more moderate example. Here is an Atlas Mercury. As I pan left and right, look how Natalie distorts. As a result, this lens forces me to consider carefully how I compose my image. Let's try the same thing on the Nanomorph. Although there is minor distortion, her face remains much flatter and there is no bulging as we pan. That can be a real advantage in certain scenarios. When filming in nature or filming scenes filled with organic shapes, not straight parallel lines, the minor distortion is typically undetectable. If there's a shot where you feel the pincushion isn't working, like this shot with all the vertical lines, you can dial it back in Resolve, perhaps even turn it into barrel distortion using the lens distortion tool, something like this. Is 28mm wide enough? Yeah, remember that it's not as wide as a 28mm on a full frame or a VistaVision camera, but also remember it's 1.5 times wider than a spherical 28mm. It's a front anamorphic, not a rear anamorphic, so it delivers anamorphic attributes, not just a stretched image. Being a 1.5 times anamorphic means its characteristics are not as strong as a 2 times lens. There is still a definite elongation of bokeh, but it's subtle, it's not in your face. Also, there isn't that soft focus fall off at the top and bottom of the frame as you would find on vintage style anamorphics. That can be a pro or a con depending on your objective. How does the lens handle flares? Please note, the Atlas Mercuries exhibit a warm flare. On the other hand, I'm using the silver edition of the Nanomorphs. So please put the color of the flare to one side. We're focusing on the other characteristics. You can see that anamorphics like the Mercuries show stronger streaks, more bubbles, more veiling flare and rainbows. On the other hand, the Nanomorphs are much cleaner. Even when pushing the lenses with dark backdrops, the trees, and bright specular sources, the sun, flares are subtle. To get strong flares, you really need specific conditions. Now, that's neither good or bad, it really just depends on what you're looking for. Let's talk about the lens's mechanical qualities. The fact that these lenses are parfocal opens the way to using zoom for effect. It's also really practical too, because you can focus while zoomed in and then zoom back out. Here's a demonstration of the lenses breathing while focusing. They breathe more horizontally than they do vertically, but that's typical for an anamorphic, especially in this price range. You can consider that as part of their aesthetic. Breathing is more evident in this shot of the brick wall. Hey, maybe we should start measuring lens breathing in brick lengths. They are acceptably sharp when wide open, but they clear up nicely at T4. This is super typical though, and is considered as a way of choosing how much character you want in your image. At T2.9, you've got all the character, stop down if you want a cleaner image. Finally, a really big plus of these Nanomorphs is that for anamorphics, they have unusually close focus. The 28 to 55 focuses as close as 45 centimeters. You need to remember that's from the sensor plane, so as the lens is about 200mm long, that's putting the lens just 200mm from your subject. What do they like to use? We'll deal with the lens's physical characteristics first, then the optical. The lenses feature an all-metal professional cine housing. They're almost exactly the same size. Importantly, the gear rings are all in the same location relative to the lens mount. Focus throw is 270 degrees. It's nicely damped. The front of the lens can accept an 80mm clamp-on matte box. They can also accept 77mm threaded filters. That's great if you'd like a light setup, or if you don't have a matte box, this lens makes a really good stepping stone for someone buying their first cine lens, as you can use your existing 77mm filters. Another feature that lowers the bar for first-time anamorphic users is its close focus, like we just mentioned. That means you won't need to invest in expensive diopters for moderate close-ups. The mount is user interchangeable. These ones are in PL. You can get pretty much any mirrorless full-frame mount. They weigh about 1.5 kilograms each. They come with shims. There's also lens supports included, but these lenses are so light, if you use them on a native PL mount like the one I'm using, there really isn't a need to put the lens supports on, so I'm not using them. You're getting Super 35 coverage. The image circle is 31.5 millimeters. It's a 1.5 times squeeze, which I think might be the most versatile squeeze ratio. It's frustrating when you have to excessively crop to hit your target aspect ratio. On a 3x2 sensor, these lenses produce a 16:9 image, give or take, and it's easy to crop it down even further into a scope aspect ratio. On a 16:9 sensor, these lenses almost produce a scope aspect ratio. So again, a teeny bit of cropping, but not excessive. Remember, a 2x lens only really gives an ideal fit with a 4x3 sensor. The lenses have user adjustable back focus without having to reshim the lenses. You need to take this cowling off to access the set screw. Now, back focus is super important for anamorphic lenses, as improper back focus will essentially misalign the anamorphic and spherical blocks, causing aberrations in the image. All in all, these are good lenses to work with. Is there anything that we didn't like? I love zooms. These are great. But I find 2x zooms, that's the ratio between the longest focal length and the widest focal length in the lens, I find 2x zoom lenses a little bit limiting. I had a similar experience with DZO Film's Kata Ace lenses. Now, one of the advantages of a zoom is that you don't need to constantly change lenses. But when the zoom isn't wide or long enough, that's exactly what you end up doing. There's not quite enough range for me going from 28mm to 55mm and then 50mm to 100mm. Now, if both of these lenses were combined into one, that would be awesome because I'd basically have a 28 to 100mm anamorphic. These lenses are fairly flare resistant, which can be a blessing and a curse. Their flare resistance helps to keep the image clean and contrasty, but if you're looking for more character, then you've got to work harder. Now, being balanced, on the other hand, if you have a lens that is overly sensitive to flares, that can end up being even more frustrating. I'm using the horizon here to look at distortion. When the horizon is in the center of the frame, it's straight as you'd expect. When it's framed near the top or bottom, it's distorted, again, as you'd expect, but the distortion isn't even. This is called moustache distortion. There's barrel distortion in the center of the image, and there's pincushion distortion towards the edges. That's what makes the horizon flatten towards the edges. It's super hard to see though in normal use, as you'd need a perfectly straight edge that's perfectly perpendicular to the camera. Now, I was hoping to use these lenses on film. Sadly, the rear elements protrude too far. It hits the mirror on our Reflex 35-3, and it won't even clear the mount on this Eclair ACL. This isn't a mark against the lenses though, as they simply aren't designed for film. The rear protruding element is in part what allows Laowa to make these lenses so small, and it's not an issue when these are clearly designed for mirrorless cameras and digital cine cameras that have very, very short flange distances. One small thing, in the right conditions, the lenses do produce a yellowish secondary flare. You can decide whether or not you like that. One last issue, this is so small that it's barely worth mentioning. The lens caps are metal. I prefer plastic or rubber because when I'm out shooting, I always place my lenses down on their caps. These metal caps are going to scratch really easily. Anamorphic lenses used to be a pragmatic decision. It was what you needed to use if you wanted to exhibit in a wider aspect ratio. Now a wide image can be shot just as easily with spherical lenses, so anamorphic is an aesthetic choice. This is evidenced by the fact that Laowa has decided to release these nanomorphs with 3 different lens coatings, because they know different people are looking for different aesthetics. These are good lenses, but they have a particular look. Let's address a misconception. Pincushion distortion is not just for cheap lenses. Expensive lenses, like Cooke anamorphics, they have it too. It's a conscious decision on the part of the lens designer, not a flaw. And to be fair, like mentioned earlier, it's not in your face. And if it is too visible in a particular shot, just rein it back in post. Remember, this is an advantage of having a cleaner lens. You can't undo a vintage lens in post if you want it cleaner. Now, there are occasions when the anamorphic aesthetic is barely visible in the image. For example, when focused near infinity, But I would say that's the same with a lot of lenses. For example, a spherical 85mm has all of its character when focused close, but it loses that the closer to infinity you get. It's just something to be conscious of. This lens isn't a magic bullet. It still requires a skilled cinematographer to make it shine. I can see their relatively clean look being ideal for people shooting event coverage, perhaps even cinematic documentary work, and they're after a different look. Oh, these lenses could be for you. They still deliver anamorphic characteristics, but they are more forgiving. You can confidently frame your talent in the extremities of the composition without worrying about sharpness. You can't do that with a lens like the Mercury or a Remus. These lenses might also be great for corporate work. Stronger anamorphic lenses can be a little bit divisive sometimes when a customer doesn't understand the aesthetic. They might ask questions like, why is the lens blurry at the top and the bottom? Is it in focus? You're not going to have those problems with the Nanomorph. So who are these lenses not for? If you need full frame coverage, these lenses aren't for you. If you want a stronger vintage aesthetic out of camera, these lenses are not for you. At the end of the day, having 28mm to 100mm of anamorphic goodness for under $6,000 is amazing value. There's no question that they are great lenses, it's just a question of if they are the right ones for you. We can't answer that. If you're in the UK and you want to try out or purchase these lenses, please get in touch with ProAV and tell them that we sent you. There's a link in the description. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you want to see more content like this, let us know down in the comments. And please subscribe for future videos. We'll see you around.